I've labeled this message at thy command for a reason. At thy command. And the reason why I did so is because of what this passage is actually saying. Paul says that hearing comes by the word of God. It comes by the word of God. So this is what Paul is saying when you look at this in this proper understanding, how it's intended to be understood. Faith, which is a free gift of God, comes by hearing. And the only way you can hear, because the way in which you are made to hear is also spoken about in this passage. Faith is a gift that comes from God. Faith comes by hearing. So you have to be made to hear. And if all people heard, if we were just talking about what the ear could consume, then everybody who hears would be saved. And that is not the case. So hearing is something that also has to be given. But the word of God tells us here in verse 17 how that takes place. It takes place by the word of God. And it's not talking about the word of God in the sense of it's just spoken and you audibly hear it. And then there is this choice or that choice when it comes to the hearer as to whether or not they will have faith. That's not what's being said here. When it says that faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word of God, the word here, when it says the word here, means command. Command. Go look it up. So what Paul is saying is this. Faith comes by hearing, but the hearing comes by the word or the command of God. God commands the hearing, and when that which was, or he who was commanded to hear, hears, faith is what they were able, that is when they were able to lay hold of faith. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing comes by God's command. This is what Paul is saying in Romans 10, verse 17. Hearing comes by the word, comes by the command. Now, let me give you an example of how this word is used. If you look back in Luke chapter 5, if you turn to Luke chapter 5, starting at the beginning, we see when the 4 fishermen are called to be fishermen, are called to be apostles for Christ. So it says in chapter 5, verse 1, so it was, as the multitude pressed about him to hear the word of God, that he stood by the lake of Gennesaret and saw 2 boats standing by the lake. But the fishermen had gone from them and were washing their nets. Then he got into one of the boats, Jesus that is, which was Simon's, and he asked him to put out from land. And he sat down and taught the multitudes from the boat. Verse 4. So when he had stopped speaking, he said to Simon, launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch. But Simon answered and said to him, Master, we have toiled all night and we have caught nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net. Now notice verse 4 and 5 again. Jesus tells Peter, an experienced fisherman, he tells him to launch out into the deep and to throw his nets back out into the water and to receive a great catch. Notice what Peter says in verse 5. Peter answered Christ and said, Master, we have toiled all night and we caught nothing. Now notice, Peter is the fisherman. Jesus is a carpenter. Peter is a seasoned fisherman. This is his career. This is his vocation. This is what